Everyone, it is nice to see you. Congratulations for everybody who has been part of the International Youth Conference. My name is Rachel Svetanoff, and I am today's host of the wonderful panel, Road to the UN Summit of the Future, sharing experiences from youth leaders in high-level spaces. To give you a quick overview of this panel, understanding today's challenges, young people are eager to use their talents to make a positive impact and look for institutions accountable to their challenges. Young people are eager to use their talents to make a positive impact. This panel will feature youth leaders who have consulted in the UN Summit of the Future, as well as other high-level spaces, sharing their perspectives on their experiences, advocating for and with youth and future generations, and share insights for engaging in high-level spaces. The outcome of this event is to mobilize an empowering network connecting youth leaders, translated into action-based awareness raising for encouraging young people and their leadership to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as safeguard future generations through policy. So with me today, I am excited to introduce our speakers. I would love for everyone to introduce yourselves, give a brief overview of your work in relation to the UN Summit of the Future. And I would love to start with Arlinda, who is right to my left.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for the invitation, Rachel. So I'm Arlinda. I come from Switzerland. I am a UN Youth Delegate here, and I'm also part of the SDG for Youth and Students Network alongside Kate and Ishaan, who is going to join us a bit later. Around the Summit of the Future, so a few months ago, around October, November, I realized that this big summit was going to happen, and there was very little youth involvement or engagement around it. And I hadn't seen any information coming up about young people being able to participate in the process. So naturally, it led to be contacting some partners such as Paula, who are here today, and Ishaan as well, with whom we decided to create a group of young leaders or UN youth delegates and youth representatives who would be working on the Summit of the Future. That naturally led to the group growing and including some other representatives from Zambia, from Austria, from Germany, and some other countries. We had consultations around the pact and the Declaration for Future Generations. And today I'm proud to say that we formed the Group of Partners for Youth Affairs, who is tirelessly working in order to include the voices of young people in the summit processes. And that is it for me.
Wonderful. No, thank you for that overview, Arlinda. Really look forward to diving deep into your advocacy work on this. Paula, you are to my right.
Thank you, Rachel. It's so nice to be here with you discussing these super exciting but also important issues. I'm Paula Pattikangas, and I come from Finland. I'm acting as a UN Youth Delegate of Finland and also chairing the Youth Peace and Security Network in Finland. And I just highly second what Arlinda already told regarding the Summit of the Future. It's so great to work with other active young people regarding the summit. And for my youth delegate mandate, this has always been my kind of end goal and the main objective during the mandate. So I'm really happy that this gains lots of attention at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Nope. Being able to meet with both of you has been an amazing part of this journey. That's how I began my own UN Summit of the Future journey, was actually meeting both of you. So it's been, just the best introduction, to real country level delegation and opportunities for young people at this level. Alina, love to introduce you next.
Hi, is my sound okay?
Yes.
Brilliant. Hi, everyone. My name is Alina Karimamusama, hailing from Zambia. My last name is quite a mouthful, and I'm the founder of AfriHer. AfriHer is an NGO. We're an organization that focuses on empowering Africa's most valuable resources, her young people and her women. You'll see my title also says Youth Leadership Council Co-Chair for the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development New York chapter. I am also their United Nations Youth Rep. My my organization in Zambia focuses on building youth hubs where young people and women can access free entrepreneur skills, capacity building, flexible funding, access to free sexual and reproductive health rights. We work a lot with people coming from the rural and remote communities in my home country. And one of the key areas that's really close and dear to my heart is not only eradicating period poverty, but ending early childhood marriages and all of our work around sexual advocacy and gender-based violence. As a child, I survived being trafficked by my father, and that is the heart and soul of my work. That is where my activism comes from. I'm a social entrepreneur now. I have businesses in Zambia. By the time I was 20, I franchised a business in Namibia. I've spoken at St. James Palace, the most senior royal palace in the UK. I've gotten to work with world leaders and celebrities alike and representing the British royal family. And it's really important for me to continue carrying the message that when young people are empowered with not only education without exposure will not be as powerful, but when young people are empowered with education and exposure, young people coming from a community like me, a place like me, they're gonna achieve exactly what I have achieved, if not greater. So that is my message, and that is the work that I do.
I think that is, quintessential what it means to actually implement on the ground each of the frameworks and agendas that the UN has been able to espouse. And I think that being able to embody that has been like so inspirational, Alina. Hearing I didn't know that about you and, your background. So hearing that from your perspectives is not only just inspiring, but also really illuminating in terms of what youth can do for local communities, for those around them. And it's a way for all of us to be able to reflect on what we are doing and why. And I think that in itself is, the greatest message that, you've been able to, already share with young people. So thank you so much. Maya, you are next.
Of course. Thank you so much, Rachel, for having me. And a special thank you to Kate as well for introducing us. It's such a pleasure to be here. So I am an intern and I act as a delegate to UN commissions for the Baha'i international community, which is a registered NGO at the UN. Mainly what I do is I assist UN representatives who work at the Baha'i international community. And one of the key areas that I've been focusing on a lot, especially for one of the lovely representatives, Daniel Perel, is on the UN Summit of the Future and the Pact specifically, especially in regards to getting NGOs more involved within the process. I've helped in research and setting up events, especially when it comes to the civil society conference in Nairobi. I've been in the background trying to help out with things like that. And it's such a pleasure to be here with such exceptional youth leaders today.
Thank you. No, it was a pleasure to meet. I'm sure we have actually been in the same circles before. So I'm pretty sure we probably interacted, if not on one part of the UN Summit of the Future declaration inputs, but on a variety of other initiatives. Just, being introduced by Kate alone has also just really closed into, this network. And I think ultimately that's what we're also trying to achieve is this unity, this solidarity of the youth movement for creating better futures. So thank you. Kate, of course, you are next.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here at the International Youth Conference and speak alongside these wonderful panelists. I'm Kate. I'm from the USA, like my friend Maya. I am a member of the SDG for Youth and Student Network, housed by UNESCO, also the co-chair of their Human Rights, Education, and Democratic Citizenship Thematic area, which works to engage more young people in the field of education for human rights and building a more peaceful, sustainable world. I've also had some experience working with other wonderful organizations like the Global Campaign for Education in the US, the United Nations Association, and the 100 Million Campaign. So thank you so much. So excited to be here today.
Thank you. No, and of course, you, Sanskriti, and I are all part of the United Nations Association of the USA. Our UNA USA Leadership Summit is this weekend. If either of you are going to be there, I will be there too. So look forward to meeting you. And so, it was through this little ecosystem as well as being able to really advocate for UN initiatives and being able to share these spaces together. So thank you, Kate. Sanskriti, last but very much not least.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Rachel. And it's an honor to be here alongside all of these amazing youth leaders. And amongst their expertise. So I'm Sanskriti, and I am actually by trade an engineer and an engineering student. I do work in quantum computing research, but that is very different from the stuff I do at the United Nations. And so if you would have asked 16-year-old me what the United Nations was, I would have said, oh, that was some organization that was built after World War II, I think, and after that there was world peace. I didn't really know a lot about the United Nations at all, but I did know a lot about the problems that existed in the world, and I wanted to do something about it, just like a lot of young people today. And I came upon UNA USA on Instagram, and I realized that they had a lot of resources to help me solve some of the problems that I wanted to solve. And after that, I was elected as the youngest national council member for the United Nations Association of the USA at 17 years old, and I've served as the Southeast representative since then, representing about 5 states, including Puerto Rico, and their interests to UNA USA. And in my terms, I've also served as the chair for the Global Engagement Summit, which happens every year, which is another big summit other than the Leadership Summit. And I was the youngest person to have that position as well. And I also serve as the vice chair for the nominations committee to ensure that we have a diverse national council and diverse representation in UNA USA. But yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. No, that really captures the essence of, our community in that way, really being able to promote the United Nations through our work and being able to rise to the occasion to address these challenges to our state legislators, which is what we will be doing next week. So to that end, and talking about this from, the perspective of global youth and, the challenges, my question to you all is, what challenges have you seen youth face in meeting inclusive leadership today? And what challenges do you think that we can anticipate that the Pact of the Future and Declaration on Future Generations will have? Paula.
Thank you. This is a really, really important and great question. I think one of the main things that young people face is that young people are not seen as experts other than on youth-specific issues. And that's a huge barrier regarding leadership on any other levels and issues. And I think the progress study on youth, peace and security also highlights quite good, the assumptions, negative assumptions that face young people. For example, the main characteristic that is associated with young people is their age. And for example, not their expertise on various issues, not their active advocacy or their leadership and engagement with wider range of young people. So I think those negative assumptions are the first step that we should tackle in order to give young people the inclusive leadership stage on other issues than only the youth-specific issues. I also want to highlight regarding the Summit of the Future and its agreements that the challenges are definitely going to be the follow-up and the lack of accountability, which are inadequate at the drafts at the moment. And I fear that young people will lose their trust in international organizations and the capacity of the international organizations to solve the problems that we all share. And because I'm by education, I'm a futures research expert, I just want to raise the lack of futures literacy and futures-oriented thinking in the agreements, as the agreements and the Summit of the Future was supposed to be the most future-oriented summits and agreements by far. But at the moment, it's not reflected in the drafts. And I think we only can build a better future if we can imagine it. So these are my main points. And I hope you also share these issues. Thank you.
Yes. Before I comment, I'm gonna say Sanskriti. Yes, this is fun. All righty, Sanskriti next.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to add a little bit to that, and I completely agree. It's so hard to be taken seriously as a young person, and it's almost like you have to prove yourself before you can actually get anything done. And so I think not just being given a place at the table is important, but being given an actual place at the table and not just a place like, oh, that's the young person that we have in the room. And So that's super important. And then another thing is accessibility and transparency about what these international organizations are doing. A lot of the times I've seen is that the people who these issues are impacting the most are the young people that aren't being told what's happening at the international level, aren't being told how to apply for these positions, aren't being told, oh yeah, we're going to have the summit of the future. So we need to increase ways to reach young people from diverse backgrounds, people who might have low socioeconomic statuses, people who might not be from the United States, people from third world countries, and give them the opportunity and the funding to have a place at the table, to attend these conferences, and to have these higher up positions, because it's really hard for them to do so.
You know, just to quickly highlight before I get to Maya, who I saw raise her hand next, the one thing that I saw when doing these consultations or, you know, the inputs through submissions is that there is one phrase that really stuck out to me as something that was like almost like it really didn't feel that like young people were given their agency. And I think that's something that you all raised, but in a way that it literally says young people will have to live with the consequences of our actions. We don't just have to live with the consequences, we bear them. It is a burden. And I think we need to be clear about that. And being able to call it for what it is something that has always been skirted around, circumvented, you know, in these types of negotiation conversations. And I think that that's something that young people just don't want to do anymore. So I agree in the fact that, you know, if we want to be futures oriented, we also just need to change the mindset of what we think the future is going to look like. Maya, you're next.
Thank you so much. I definitely agree with all the prior points. I think another great issue is the great digital divide that we face. Many youth don't have access to the technology that they need in order to engage in wonderful opportunities like these, to attend online panels, to find out the resources that are provided online through institutions like the United Nations. Aside from that, I think one big fear that people really have about these forthcoming documents, such as the Declaration and the Pact, is that it will be a monumental moment, but then no further action will be taken. A lot of people are worried that it's going to be this beautiful process that will occur for one time, but the action-oriented language within the pact won't actually take forth an action. I feel like that's one really big issue that people fear. So I think as youth, we need to make sure that we use our voices to ensure that this isn't just one nice moment for a while and then we celebrate and move on, but that it's actually sustainable and it produces outcomes that last for a very long time and remain consistent.
Yes, definitely. Alina.
Thank you, Maya and Paula, because your sentiments echo exactly what I feel and what I think a lot of young people feel. The first is there's a bias against young people. Because of our age, we are considered arrogant. We don't know what we're talking about. Young people are very quick to act without rationalizing. There are all these biases against young people and not being considered experts in our fields because of our age. And then again, it's the issue of advocacy and access to technology. How do they participate if they don't have access to funding to participate in person? Some young people, especially the young people that personally I work with, a lot of them don't have access to the internet, to computers, to this. And I know that my organization, we're working to build a STEM academy in a village. However, focusing on young people at grassroots level is also extremely crucial and important. How do we get this message across to them? A challenge I anticipate for Pact of the Future is that, again, we will have more pizza box participation of young people. Young people, international organizations are kind of treating us as tokens to show that their DEI is working, right? Like, of course, we have a diversity and equity inclusion policy in place. Here are the young people. We care about their opinions. Come and talk to us about what you think we should do better. But you're not inviting us to implement these solutions. You're not recognizing us as stakeholders at the table who are also have something important to say on policy reform and international policy reform. It's just come and advocate more at the events, and a lack of accountability. We want to see a little less conversation and a whole lot more action. We don't want to keep talking about the changes that we want to see. We want to witness the change being implemented. That's my 2 cents.
Much more than 2 cents. So definitely agreed. And you said the magic word, and it was financial resource. I guess financial resources is 2 words. The magic 2 words, the financial resources involved in being able to actually, put your money where your mouth is. Walking the walk, not just talking a talk. That is quintessentially what youth have been advocating for time and time again. Kate, I see you raised your hand as well.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So all of the wonderful panelists here made some really great and informative points. They're similar to my intervention. I've noticed too, for my work personally, that tokenism is pretty prevalent, unfortunately, where organizations say we have a young person, but it's all for face. And that definitely, I think that's becoming more rare, but it's unfortunately still an issue there. I attended the ECOSOC Youth Forum in April last month, and some of the challenges that I noticed too related to kind of organizational things in terms of attending. So for example, I know that one criticism was that acceptance letters to attend ECOSOC were sent out, a week before the event, and that doesn't give youth participants enough time to get a visa. And I know the visa process to travel to the US and attend conferences there can be very difficult for some young people. And if there's little guidance on this process, like how to apply for a visa, what you need to do, how long it could take to get to you, I know that could definitely be a challenge, navigating this process to get there in the first place. And I think another panelist mentioned this great point too, but I also noticed that funding was a big challenge. If young people don't have funding, not everybody, has the resources to buy a plane ticket, to book, a hotel room to stay at. So I think there needs to be more support, number one, for young people to physically get to these places, to figure out, the documents they need to do so. And more coordination and more respect to young people's time, because sending out acceptance letters last minute, like a day or a week in advance, is not sustainable for traveling. So I think, based on my observations realistically with other young people, I think these are definitely some things we have to fix.
Exactly. And those are very practical steps too, where like sometimes it's just small things that really build up to having these larger effects. Arlinda.
Thank you so much. And I comply with all of your points. And these were the points that when I thought of these questions, all of these points came out. So I can only align with everything you said. I think that it's very difficult nowadays to be speaking of an inclusive leadership system. I think that we are getting there, but we are still such a way long in. We still have so much more work to do with this. And if we are recognized as valuable assets, let's say, in this world, most of the time, it's not with our presence, it's more with our ideas, or including us in the different consultative processes, not even being there seated at the table and actually taking the decisions or being part of the negotiation. So I think that this is one of my biggest frustrations personally, to be working on all of these different aspects, but then to not be able to commit until the end in a way. And then to come back a bit on the Summit of the Future, I think that some of the challenges we can anticipate, and even already see for the Pact and the Declaration is that young people and future generations have been and are put in the sidelines of concerns. That the documents that have been delivered in the revision of the Pact, we can see that youth is not cross-cutting all of the chapters, for example, and I think that this is a big issue. Children not being mentioned also. They exist, they are within the Pact, they are within the Declaration, but there are so many pages and maybe 2 mentions, 3 mentions, and this is really not enough when it comes to deciding and discussing our future. And to speak also a bit about the Declaration and the challenges around the Declaration for Future Generations, I think that is extremely disappointing to see that such an important historical and important text being just so unambitious and not aligned with what our generation fears and what our generation is fighting. I would like personally to see more risk. I think some of you tackled this subject already, but I think that we need risk, we need more innovation, we need more creativity in the outcomes of these texts. We don't have the luxury today to be excluding the mention of younger generation, children, adolescents, women as well, refugees. I mean, we can tackle all of these different points. So we really need to be more ambitious, and I think that us as young people can bring that fresh air and fresh outlook on these different aspects.
Exactly. This actually reminds me of a quote from it was US President, it was Lyndon B. Johnson, and it was about the Wilderness Act, which took place back in 1964, protecting our environment. And he says, if future generations are to remember us with gratitude rather than contempt, we must leave them something more than the miracles of technology. And innovation is more than just technology, just as you mentioned. And we must leave a glimpse of the world as it was in the beginning, not just after we go through with it. And that in itself, I thought was so powerful and so resonating. If this took place in 1964 and here we are in 2024 seeing the same issues arise, what are we doing here? Like, let's just call it out for what it is. And, let's put our, guards down for a minute and just imagine what this might look like realistically, but also what we can actually achieve in the future. So to that end, my next question for you all is, what do you think the future of the youth role in shaping global agendas should look like? And how can they contribute to reach, other global agendas like the 2030 SDGs and other future goals? Sanskriti.
Yeah, so I think the youth role is only going to increase as time goes on. And I think it's because of young people around the world. And to be honest, we're angry. We're angry that nothing has been done for a lot of these big issues that we're facing today. And we're inheriting a world filled with problems that could have been solved much before. And I think that anger is going to end up accumulating into progress in a way. And we've seen this with other young generations before us. And I'm really excited to see it. And I think the difference between our youth generation and other youth generations is that we're almost all connected because of social media. Like, think about this panel itself. This would not have been possible to do, let's say, even like 10 years ago. And I would have to fly in to see you guys, which I would also love to do, but it wouldn't be as accessible. We wouldn't have this audience that we do. And so I think because of social media, because of technology, we're going to be able to amplify our message, connect with other change makers, and only sort of create a domino effect of change. And so I know every young person around me has an issue that they care about, whether it be a social issue, an economic issue, a political issue. And we're trying to find ways to have resources to fix those issues in our local areas and internationally. And so I think what's going to happen is us young people, we're going to sort of pave the way for even more young people, give them the resources they need to make a change. And it's going to create, hopefully, a domino effect of positivity and positive change in the right direction.
Exactly. The word anger, comes up, especially with, when we talk about passions as well. What are you passionate about? And sometimes that passion manifests in different ways. And being able to, understand that perspective, that not only are we passionate, there are real feelings behind it. And, anger sometimes just translates into productivity and, scratching an itch more than it is just like, pursuing it. But it's channeling that into positive impact. I think that you captured that perfectly. Kate, next.
Absolutely. I absolutely think that youth are leading the way. And I love what Sanskriti just said too about the domino effect of change, because I think that's definitely a reality right now. And I'm so thankful to be part of a generation that's so active in achieving the SDGs and defending human rights. I can speak on behalf of the SDG for Youth and Student Network. I've met so many young people who are leading the way now in human rights and the SDGs in their own specific niches. So I know youth leaders who have started their own organizations or have leadership positions and organizations that do things like fight human trafficking, that promote gender equality, that further global education, that further education for students in emergency settings, education for students, for neurodivergent students. And so I'm so inspired by seeing all of this. And I can tell that, with all of these efforts, we're definitely shaping the global agendas, not just for the future, but for today. And in terms of contributing to the 2030 SDGs and other future goals, I found that community organizing can make a really big impact and go a long way. And, the scale of organizing doesn't have to be, large, so to say, or worldwide. Even, starting at the ground is very effective, whether that's spreading awareness and or education about the sustainable development goals. The more people we reach, the more we can make that collective impact. And I love to say knowledge is power. And it's important to be open to sharing expertise with each other, because if we don't, start leading the change, then who else will?
Exactly. Alina, I think you can actually build on this better than I can, so I leave it to you.
Thank you, Sanskriti and Kate. Both of you have added valuably to this conversation and discussion. So on the topic, it's important to recognize that young people do have a really crucial role to play in shaping the global agenda. I'm from Africa. 70% of the entire continent's population is under 30. We're not the future of the continent. We're the now. We're here. We're present right now. And every time leaders say young people are the future of the world or the future, I feel like it's just a cheap way to take away accountability for dealing with us right now, for meeting our demands right now, what they are. And unfortunately, it's sad because we need intergenerational solutions. It's not just young people that need to lead and pave what the future will look like. We need intergenerational solutions. We need to work with our generation and the generation that came before us. And like Arlinda said, the children, really important. If there is a future, it's them. We're paving the way for them right now. We're dealing with this rubble and we're trying to leave a better world for the children to thrive in, but also for us to thrive in right now, right? And I think the SDGs can't be achieved with individual effort. The SDGs need to be achieved it takes a collective effort. And it's again goes back to making the messages accessible for people who don't even speak English as a language. They need to understand why the SDGs are in place. They need to understand how the SDGs are going to work, what the goals are, what is the agenda, and how does this benefit everyone? How do we localize the global sustainable development goals? How do we localize that at community level? How do we translate these messages so that the indigenous community, the native community, can also understand and be part of it? And again, indigenous knowledge is extremely important to achieving the SDGs. When we talk about the environment and the impact of litter, trash in the oceans, and this, you barely need to explain that to indigenous communities because they understand the importance of taking care of the earth. They understand the importance of recycling. People that are coming from LEDCs, least economically developed countries or poorer communities, they understand why it's important to recycle without even thinking about environmental impact. There's an economic impact that forces them to recycle, to reuse, to reduce. So that's really important to take into consideration and account.
Definitely. One thing that, I try to always, promote is in indigenous knowledge, the 7 generations principle. That is where, in my opinion, how we came up with strategic foresight, how we began with the Pact of the Future. Actually, even in the work that my organization, Global Futurist Initiative, does, one of our goals literally is about the 7 generations principle and assuring that indigenous communities are being credited with that concept. So to that end, it is always important to be able to highlight their role and the knowledge and wisdom that they have been able to pass on way more than we have. So, it's truly critical to be able to do that in a way that honors, everybody who has done this before us, but also in a way that assures that our futures are actually being taken care of. And that includes us today. So, thank you for highlighting that. And, if nobody else has a comment to make, I'd be happy to move on to the next question, but I wanted to just open this up quickly in case nobody raises their hand. Yes, Maya.
Of course. Everyone spoke so beautifully, so I'm not quite sure how much I can really add on to this, but one thing that I think shocked me when seeing this question for the first time is that, global youth make up 16% of the population worldwide currently. And although that number seems small at first, it really is very significant when you look at it within the much bigger picture. We have so much passion, we harbor so much talent and skills and novel insights that older generations may not have because they've lived through completely different experiences, just as much youth. And I think if there's anyone that can bridge the digital divide, can bridge the partnership between NGOs and international organizations, is there anyone that can bridge between the generations? I think it's youth. I think we harbor that power and that ability. And I believe that our role in shaping global agendas will be doing the act of bridging naturally as youth between one another.
Exactly. No, it is. It really is, breaking down barriers and building bridges, and I credit that to a mentor of mine who has been doing this work for decades, longer than I have. But yes, Arlinda.
Thank you so much for all of these points. And I just wanted to jump in very quickly on what Alina has said before and you, Maya, just said right now. Building these bridges are so important, and especially in these regions where demographically there is a bigger representation of youth. We can see that in the Balkans today, where there is a bigger representation of demography of young people as well. And we can see that these actions in the grassroots level have resonation at the national and then global level. And ultimately, this also feeds this feedback loop when it comes to the global feeding then the grassroots level. So all these connections, and I think youth plays a primordial role as a diplomat, in a way, as a negotiator of all of these different points and in finding solutions at all these different levels.
Exactly. Yes, it's much more than just representation. It is agency. It is negotiation. That definitely captures, what we see ourselves as and what we hope that we are being seen as and heard. Not to not credit the United Nations Youth Office's Be Seen, Be Heard campaign. So, speaking of, in some ways, platforms being able to utilize technology, I want to shift gears a little bit and, think about this from a practical lens. Something I always like to incorporate in, panels or events is, being able to provide resources. And so for all of you, what tools or platforms are you using to do your work? And, it could be, LinkedIn, of course, but if there's any others that are like, kind of not necessarily as well known, but have been, very helpful. It could even be a project management tool. What are they and how have you found them? Alina.
So that's a brilliant question. I'm going to give this answer specifically for young people who are looking to get started at social impact work. You want to build your own NGO and you don't know where to start, how to run it, all of that. Canva was the most useful resource for me when I first started. I could not believe I discovered Canva. And how I discovered Canva, I was at the Africa Leadership Academy, and I was going through an entrepreneur boot camp for the Nzisha Prize, which is Africa's most prestigious award for young entrepreneurs. And we had to create pitch decks. And a lot of us were using what was it? I don't even remember now. That's how good Canva is. It's like, I don't remember any previous relationships before Canva. I think it was a Microsoft PowerPoint or something. And they're like, well, we're going to pay for your Canva Pro subscription, and this is going to help you. And there are just so many templates, so many guidelines that you can use to create, whether it's logos or what's most useful for Canva for my organization actually is our newsletters, our external newsletters, right? We need it to look professional. Our email header at the bottom, like your email signature, you want to kind of create that personal connection between a potential funder, a potential partner or donor, and who your organization is, the people between you and your organization. So that helps bring a humanity side to it. MailChimp is exceptional, again, for sending out emails and newsletters. At the time, we used to use SurveyMonkey, when we're just trying to do surveys between people that interact with our social media platform. And social media is amazing to get your message across. There's a time for you to work on your organization and do the actual work and track your impact. And then there's a time that you need to raise visibility for the work and causes you're passionate about. And that's where social media comes in. It helps you reach audiences that are not in close proximity. So I would say take advantage of every social media at your thumbprints, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And there's a really cool platform called Vedentrum. And I know that you have to pay for it, but they did this cool thing where It was in 2022 though, but just reach out to the Vedentrum team and it just helps you track live numbers, all the big questions that your funders or donors might have about impact, about reach, about what is the feedback from the community, how are you tracking the impact. It helps you manage that so easily. And it's still, from my organization, we have a social enterprise, and this isn't really a software tool or platform, but it's just very important that you do your BMC, which is just your business module canvas. If you're thinking of building a social enterprise, they're going to ask the big questions like, so you're creating impact in your community, in your country. That's brilliant, but how are you generating revenue and how is this sustainable? That's a big one to consider, is just a business module canvas part of your NGO. Have something that generates income that's able to sustain itself so that you're not just reliant on the grants or funds.
Exactly. I also love Canva. It is my favorite. Because I discovered it when I was applying for an internship. So oftentimes, just for reference to any young person out there, when you are applying for jobs and you see different software programs, even if you've never heard of it before and end up not getting that position or getting that position, you are able to find a lot of these resources to where you can find opportunities to just learn about it. And that's how I learned about Canva, was applying through an internship. And I'm like, oh, okay, 7 years in, still using my number one platform. All righty, Arlinda, next. Sorry, I thought everybody raised their hand, so in case and not, feel welcome to pass over. I see Paula did raise her hand though.
I can quickly jump in. Then, since you called me, I was going to say Canva. Canva is beautiful, amazing. One of it just changed my world, and I think it just changed everyone's world since it existed or started to exist. One that I would quickly add, and maybe it goes without saying, WhatsApp. I mean, I feel like we are in so many WhatsApp groups. At some point, it also gets a bit counterproductive just in how many we are, but I think that is the best tool for communication still. And because it is free as well, it makes things way easier. And Google Drive. I mean, I feel like this platform has just democratized collaborative work overall, and it allows you to comment on so many things at the same time, work on so many documents at the same time. So these would be my biggest tools.
For sure. Paula.
Thank you. Yes, Canva and Google Drive, the best. But I also want to raise, I think no one already mentioned Slack. If you're familiar with Slack, if you're working with lots of people, you have different teams or different projects, you can just put different folders or groups for the different themes, and kind of work with in WhatsApp. Slack, it's free. However, it only stores the content for 3 months with the free version. But with the Google Drive, it works so well. So I highly recommend that. But I also want to raise, this is not a kind of an electronic tool, but something that I found really, really useful when if you want to have an impact on your government, for example. And that is a national action plan. I'm going to elaborate a little bit, and especially the Youth, Peace and Security National Action Plan. It's based on the UN Security Council Resolution 2250, and I've found it super, super influential because we can all the time kind of refer to the National Action Plan, and our country has agreed on or committed to youth inclusion. And it's also great for the country image. But the point behind all of this is that I'm not sure if you know how the actual resolution 2250 came about. The idea for the resolution was actually invented in the sauna of the Finnish Youth Council. And the idea was handed to the then Secretary General Ban Ki-moon next summer when he was visiting in Finland. So it did not go through the government, but I wasn't part of that, but my fellow delegates, they handed the idea to the Secretary General, and it ended up being a resolution. So I think the most valuable tool or platform is whatever you use, just create and work together and just, you know, do stuff, whatever it means is best for you, and just create those things and don't ask permission. Just do it and give it to the high level people. I think that's the best way to go.
I love that. Kate.
Yeah, I absolutely second what my fellow co-panelists have said. I'm also a big fan of Canva and apps that do community building. You know, Instagram, WhatsApp, Slack that have been mentioned. With UNESCO SDG for Youth, we work with young people from 88 countries, and contacting each other over WhatsApp is really an amazing thing. You know, to have such a wide network within just within one little app on your phone. And one more that I'd also like to highlight that's a non-digital tool is books. I'm an avid reader, and when I was first breaking into the social impact space or the UN work, and I figured out that's what I wanted to do, I've learned so much, you know, not just from looking up online resources, but also from purchasing books, you know, written about the UN, or other books written about wonderful humanitarians, you know, and global health and children's rights and the SDGs, you know, clean water, eliminating poverty, all of those very important topics that I know I'm very passionate about. So those are some of the tools that I've enjoyed very much, and that I think can really make a great impact.
Yes, certainly. And Sanskriti.
Oh yeah, I agree with everyone as well. I'm also a big Canva person, so woo, go Canva. I promise this is not a sponsored panel, but I wanted to kind of add on and say I think like all of these tools are so great for community building, but I think one sort of improvement or mistake that I myself made when I was getting started with social impact work was I didn't look in my own backyard, if that makes sense. So I forgot that there were people in my own city, even though I come from like a very like small town, and like in my local government that were facing the same issues, that wanted to solve those same issues. And instead I started, you know, reaching out to people from other countries as well, which was very helpful. But I realized looking in my own backyard that I was able to build a local community from that. And then one of the best resources, which again was not digital, from that I gained was mentors in the space. Turns out a lot of the fights that we're fighting have existed for a very long time, unfortunately, but because of that, there are a lot of people who have been in that fight longer. And so reach out to them. 9 times out of 10, that person will help. They will give you the resources you need, or will help you guide you in the right directions. And create advocates for yourself, in the sense that if you're in a space and you're the only young person in the room, find a friend who can advocate for your abilities, for your champions, for your causes, and stuff like that. And so don't underestimate the power of like mentoring and creating advocates for yourself through these different channels that my amazing co-panelists have talked to you about.
Exactly. Maya, yes.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That was so beautifully said, Santini. Definitely. I think people are such a useful resource. However, sometimes they may be hard to find in some cases for some people. So I feel like it's also our duty to be as resources to other individuals as well. It's our duty to talk about our experiences, to not, you know, in popular terms, maybe gatekeep what we've been through, what organizations we've worked with, what tools we use. That's why we do opportunities like this, where we convey to other people publicly what we've done, how we've done it, and in what ways, in order to act as resources. And I think as youth advocates, it's our duty to be able to do that, to share with others our experience and what we use in order to improve the issues we're trying to work towards.
Exactly. You know, I feel like an organic question coming up, and something that each of you have kind of touched upon, which is, you know, what are some of the greatest lessons that you have learned in this space? Alina.
Girl, so many.
I can say for one thing, and you know, this comes from, well, you know, a very honest place, understanding the context of what it is to be a white girl in America, coming with certain privileges, having to not, go through a lot of the struggles that women of color or people of color in general having go through, there's this era of being able to go in and, be able to just like, help and, what you're doing and, this is, evidence driven and, you come in with this research and you're not listening to the voices of the community. And that's something that I have learned deeply and profoundly and graciously in a way that, has been able to work on, and something that I reflect on anytime I'm working with different communities, even in my own community. How we go in with the expectation of just instead of helping, but listening, because oftentimes communities have the knowledge of not only knowing what the issue is, but they also know what the solution is. And that's where the gap just needs to be filled, is implementing the solutions that they've already been able to come up with. So that's a genuine lesson that I have learned in my activist journey. I want to take a minute to introduce Ishaan. Hello there. Thank you for joining us. We're really glad to have you. You're mentioned earlier, missed you, but we're glad that you are here now. I'd love to take the chance for you to introduce yourself. And the question that we just started was, what is a lesson that you have learned in the youth activism space? Like, what is one of the greatest lessons that you have learned?
Firstly, please accept my apologies for being so incredibly late, but so great to be here in this space and so great to see so many familiar faces of young people, incredible young people that I've had the opportunity to work with and continue to work with on various initiatives throughout the UN system and beyond. My name is Ishaan. I'm 20 years old, based in London, and I am the former now co-chair of the Conference Expert Subcommittee as part of the UN Civil Society Conference that was recently held in Nairobi. I wear a number of different positions or hats across the UN system, working with many of these lovely young people you see on your screens now. But yeah, I think the main sort of learning has been to find your community, find the people that keep you sane, find the people that keep you in check in terms of your own well-being and mental health. I love the voice notes that Arlinda sends me on WhatsApp. I love when Paula checks in on me to make sure that I'm surviving and I'm okay. So I think it's about finding your community, find the people who bring you the joy in this work, particularly in the UN space, which is a space that can get quite demoralizing, quite depressing at times, a space where you're often sort of faced with a lot of barriers, a lot of resistance. And I think you need some of those people to keep you in check, to make sure you're taking care of yourself, but also people that you can trust to keep the door open while you take a rest and while you recharge and re-energize. And having that community is invaluable and a very strong learning, which I think I've learned the hard way after many burnouts, but I think it's something that's invaluable. So find the people that bring you joy in life and spend time with them as much as possible.
Exactly. Very well said. We're lifting each other up and holding each other accountable. Alina, I see you raised your hand.
Yes. Thank you, Ishaan. Nice to meet you on the chat. I'm not one of the people that send you messages, but I'm very, very friendly, and I'll get your number from Rachel and I'll check in on you too. So you can add me to your community. So one of the lessons I want to build on what Maya raised about using your voice and not gatekeeping. There've been so many lessons in this journey of leadership, of growth. Firstly, like personally as an individual leading your organization, becoming a first-time employer so young, and building solutions that work for the community as well. The first one I'll pick up is you cannot create a solution for a community without their full participation. You need their full engagement. You don't take the solution to them. You find the solution with them. They need to be involved from ideation, implementation, preliminary to feedback stage and monitoring and evaluation. Like, you work with the community and the people to find the solution. And that's where a lot of world leaders go wrong with finding solutions that are inclusive for young people. It's not real inclusion that's happening with us. And then the second, the biggest for me, whether it's my for-profit business, whether it's working with the UN, whatever consultations or work that I'm doing, it's just reminding myself or being reminded the power of my youth voice. the power of my voice as an individual. For so long, and every time that I was pitching to, whether it was investors or business partners or applying for grants or talking about the impact, the very real impact that my organization creates, for so many years, I would hide behind sharing the impact stories. I even have 2 impact stories that were my favorite to tell. It was one of Wendy and Ruth, and you find them still on our website. But the real change, like the real visibility for my organization, started to happen when I shared my founding story. And that's something I would always shy away from. I don't want people to see me. And it made me feel like a coward for so long. And I know that survivors we don't know anybody else's story, but there was such power and transformation that happened when I did share my story, when I did share the real raw truth of why my organization started. And one of the panelists had said before, like anger and passion are real drivers of change. You have to be really angry about a situation to want to change it. And that's how my organization was born. I was so angry that after 16 years, there are still women and families going through exactly what my family, myself, my sister, and many other people had gone through, that there was still no change, that no one was looking out for these young girls and these young women still. I was so angry about that, I decided I will not wait to have access to the right resources. I will not wait for government to respond to my letter. I will not wait for this and that. I will start now with whatever I have, whatever capacity, whatever power. So your biggest resource, my humble opinion as a young person, is your voice. No matter how little, how big, whatever you have available to you or don't have available to you, your voice is important. And with your voice, you can instigate change and do so many things. So your voice, like your real voice, is extremely important to all the work that you do. Make yourself heard. And as a young woman, I have to say, don't be the woman that goes quietly behind. Push yourself, like as a person, as a young person, wherever you are, push yourself to speak up for what truly matters to you.
Exactly. Nope, could not have said it any better. Sanskriti, I saw you raise your hand.
Awesome. Those were such beautifully worded answers, first of all. So thank you guys for that. I know I'm going to be taking away a lot of these answers with me as I go on throughout life and throughout advocacy. To add on to that a little bit, I think don't underestimate yourself and your abilities. So like for me and my background, like I grew up like in the inner city of like Charlotte, North Carolina. We had like metal detectors and like we got patted down before we went into school. Like every single day we had metal detectors before we got into school. And I'm also an engineer. When I first got started with advocacy, I was like, what am I doing here? Like I do like quantum computing stuff. There's no reason that I need to be on the UN or be the chair of this summit. And I thought of my background as a weakness almost. And then I realized it was a strength. The diversity of opinions and the diversity of perspectives and the diversity of experiences is what leads to actual innovation. And like we mentioned before, innovation is not just technological innovation, but it's actual progress, actual solutions. And so don't underestimate your background. Every single person who's in a leadership position has a different background, even though they might not talk about it. And that is their strength. Your differences are your strength. Your story is your strength. And whatever you bring to the table is going to help us bring better solutions. Like, for example, like with my engineering background, I was able to think about problems in a way that, other people weren't able to. And to the Global Engagement Summit, we were actually able to have a panel about the ITU and the work they're doing, which wasn't ever done before. And at that summit, it was the first time that quantum computing was ever mentioned on the United Nations stage in New York City. And so you never know what you can do as a young person. Bring your background and your story with you.
Exactly. Paula.
Thank you so much. I'm just in awe of your all great ideas, and I just want to second all of your thoughts, and especially what Alina you said about gatekeeping. I think that's one of the most valuable lessons I have learned myself, because one voice is not enough to make change, but you need people around you. And you should be proud of your work, but don't be too proud if that leads to gatekeeping your ideas. And finally, just as I already stated, don't wait for permission. That's I think the most valuable for me during this last few years. For so long, I was waiting for permission to do this or to do that, and I didn't have the people that encouraged me to do those things that I wanted to do. And finally, I got tired of this. And I would say that these last few years, especially this year, has been by far the most impressive and impactful of my life, and I have gained so many new friends and so many new great initiatives. So just don't wait for a permission. Just do it.
Just do it. Yes. I think, and I'm not sure like if we get cut off right at the minute mark, but Kate, take it away for the last 10 seconds.
Thank you so much. These are all great lessons, and I'll be quick. So I think the big three, just so to say, that I've learned are: number one, it's okay to ask for help, and you should if you feel you need it. Two, it's okay to make mistakes. And three, as some of the other panelists here mentioned, sometimes you'll probably have to advocate for yourself, and it's very important that you can do that. As we mentioned earlier in our really productive conversation, there are still some people who kind of disqualify youth, and they say, well, what do you know? You're a young person, or you're X years old, or you have blank many years in experience. They might say that's not a lot, but it's important to respectfully assert, well, I bring a new perspective to the table. I'm a young person speaking on behalf of young people, so I'm aware of the challenges that relate to young people, and I should be here because I have a voice and it needs to be amplified. And so I think that those are big three things that I've kind of taken with me, that have guided me throughout my work.
Exactly. And to be able to learn all of these lessons and be able to pass it on, pass the torch on to already, the next set of leaders. I'm really, pleased and honored to have shared this with you, share my story a little bit, share and be able to enable all of us to be able to really grow this community, to be unified. And so to this end, I invite all of you, the speakers, to connect with each other. I think we all have each other's emails at least, and to be able to take it from there. But also, in case not, you can always reach out to me. In case out in the audience you would like to connect with us, I'm sure we'd be happy to. If you want to reach out to me specifically, I'm just going to say my LinkedIn handle, RSVETANOFF. So in case you would like to hear from us more, you can follow our work. But thank you so much, IYC, for enabling us to have this discussion. I hope all of us can do this again sometime. Maybe we can think about doing something for the Summit of the Future in September. But thank you all. You are all amazing, wonderful, and I hope to keep in touch with each and every one of you and wish you the very best on your activist journeys. So thank you. Bye, everyone, and have a good weekend.